In 1996, Konami gathered a group of people together and gave them the name Team Silent, tasking them with developing a video game that would be successful out in the Americas. They hoped Team Silent would create a game that emulated the flashy style of modern Hollywood movies at the time and gave them creative freedom to do what they wanted. After some stumps and disagreements, Team Silent chose to go down the psychological horror road with deep emotional roots for their video game. And lo and behold, they took us on a journey through the dark, depressing, and incredibly unsettling road through Silent Hill. The story follows Harry Mason as he looks for his adopted daughter in Silent Hill after being involved in a car accident when a little girl randomly stumbles in front of their car. After waking up, we take control of Harry as he explores the foggy, lonely streets and dark, ominous alleys. Eventually, the environment grows darker and darker, with blood and organs splattered on random sides of the road, and at the end of the alley is this hung-up, dismembered body. Upon turning around to leave the alley, Harry is attacked by these undead children-like creatures until he passes out and wakes up in this little cafe with Sybil Bennett, a cop who came to Silent Hill from a nearby town to investigate the strange occurrences. From here, the two go on separate paths to investigate different parts of the town. Throughout his adventure, Harry explores a school, a church, a hospital, and the streets of Silent Hill, all which grow more and more dangerous the more he finds out. And I would be lying if I said I understood it all, but I did get things here and there, and while doing some research online, this is basically what's going on in Silent Hill. The first thing to understand about the town of Silent Hill is that this town just comes with a layer of paranormal. There is something in this town that can bring out your fear and anger and guilt and turn that into your own specific nightmare that you need to fight through and overcome. That's just a thing we gotta accept before moving forward, okay? Okay. Now, because of this paranormal power in this once normal town, a cult began to form, and they called themselves the Order, and they successfully placed themselves throughout the town's political system in order to gain more influence and power, and their goal is to bring to life the god that they worship so he or she or it can bring their version of paradise. Now, the Order, they're a cult, and cults love rituals, and they just be doing rituals all night long. So because of the rituals and the already paranormal energy of the town, Dahlia Gillespie, a cult member, gives birth to a girl with psychic abilities named Alessa, and Alessa is meant to give birth to the god that they believe in, but after an explosion, Alessa suffers intense injuries but is kept alive because of how strong her powers are. Dahlia reports her daughter is dead while secretly keeping her alive. Now, Silent Hill, on top of everything else it's got going on, also has a drug problem because of Michael Kaufman, who is a drug trafficker. They hire Lisa to keep an eye on Alessa in secret and tend to her injuries, but Lisa is freaked out by Alessa because she never stops bleeding, and her injuries never heal, and she's just bleeding everywhere. So when Lisa tries to back out, Michael Kaufman gets her addicted to drugs and then bribes her with more drugs as long as she continues to care for Alessa. Also, remember the explosion that Alessa was caught in that left her all messed up? Well, when this happened, Alessa's soul was split into two separate beings. One half of her soul stayed inside Alessa, forever suffering, while the other half manifested into a baby named Cheryl Mason and was adopted by our main character, Harry Mason. A few years later, and Harry and Cheryl decide to take a little vacation in Silent Hill, but when the car accident happens at the start of the game, it causes Alessa and Cheryl's soul to become whole again, causing the town of Silent Hill to make Alessa's suffering and trauma to become a very real place and take over the town. So at this point, Alessa and Cheryl are one person, so we're gonna call her Cheryl because that's what she's called in Dead by Daylight. Cheryl goes astral projecting, which is when you send your spiritual self out on an adventure while you're physically asleep, and draws these circles known as the Seal of Metatron because she's trying to stop the Order from bringing back their god. Dahlia lies to Harry to get him to stop Cheryl. Sybil is possessed at one point, and luckily I was able to save her because apparently you can kill her when she attacks you, but I knew better. Harry stops Cheryl, but that means Dahlia wins as she summons her demon god dude. The demon god kills Dahlia and Harry kills the demon god. Lisa shows up. Oh, and by the way, Lisa is dead the whole time. She died before the game's story took place, but she's here now because Alessa was attached to her and was manifesting her. Anyway, Lisa shows up and takes Kaufman, the drug dealer, with her, which, hell yeah, girl, you get your revenge. Alessa/Cheryl is reincarnated and given to Harry as a baby, and he and Sybil escape the town as it falls to ruin. The end. But also, because of how much demonic shit happens in the game, the town's paranormal abilities are now deeply corrupted, which means people who visit Silent Hill from now on are gonna experience their own trauma in messed up ways that we're gonna talk about in the later sequels. The story for Silent Hill, there's no other way to put it, it's near perfect. It's abstract enough to let you put the pieces together while still feeling super engaging and intriguing. The characters all feel like there's something kind of off about them, but you don't really know what it is or who you can trust. It's disturbing and dark, and yet it still feels grounded and down to earth in a lot of ways. Like, yeah, there's spiritual, soul-splitting, demonic summoning, manifesting the dead back to life, which if done wrong can come off as cheesy and eye-roll inducing, and yet the game keeps it subtle enough. Sybil is just as confused as you are about the events, and is just trying to do her job, and it's a nice balance to a character like Lisa, who gives off a very weird vibe throughout the game and says some really weird things, but it never feels over the top. Speaking of acting, some of the acting in this game is
Sybil! Wake up! Snap out of it! Sybil!
And I get it, it's a really old game for a really old console. These cutscenes are still great, and it's even better when you realize that one person spent 2.5 years living in the office working on all these cutscenes, and it just makes me have so much more respect for them. Sure, they're aged like cheddar cheese, but they're really good cheddar cheese. It's all charming in a weird way. It got a chuckle out of me, and it was nice to have these moments of, whew, I can breathe for a second before being thrown back into the tense, anxiety-inducing level design. The first style of level design that you'll be exploring is the town, drenched in fog so that you can barely see what's in front of you, which was only done because you couldn't. The draw distance in the game back then wasn't far, so if they didn't put any fog, you could tell when things were loading in. And the fact that they added this fog and it became a part of the town's lore, the town is eerie and unsettling and trippy to explore, with parts of the road destroyed entirely, keeping everyone in Silent Hill trapped. The monsters in the town do get a bit repetitive throughout the game, but it's a short game, and most of the time you just end up running away from the monsters to find your next destination. The indoor areas consist of dark hallways, large black courtyards, tight, hard to see around tiny rooms. Indoors, you get more variation of enemies, with different locations having a different set of enemies. And then everything becomes the other world, when the alarms go off and Silent Hill becomes the trauma-filled manifestation of the citizens inside it. It's dirty, rusty, almost blood-like. The soundtrack and sound effects go all out, getting louder and louder and feeling chaotic and overstimulating. And this is where the other piece of the level design comes in, the music and sound design. The music from Silent Hill is some of the best in gaming because of how unique it is. Instead of orchestral music that sounds kind of creepy and sets the tone, the music is straight up messy, almost random sounding industrial sound effects. And while the combat is incredibly clunky and dated, and the monsters upon glance aren't as scary as I'm sure they used to be when the game first came out, it's all made up for by the sheer amount of ways the game finds to get under your skin. Sometimes you'll be in a tiny ass room with twisty hallways, and you can't see around the corner, but you hear something there. Sometimes there is something there, sometimes there isn't. And isn't that what Silent Hill is all about? Silent Hill is a masterpiece. It might not be perfect, and it might be dated, but I don't care. The fact that this is the first entry and we're already throwing the word masterpiece around, it's got me excited for the future.